Wow,
Chris,
Chris,
what a
what a
great
great
tan
tan
you've
you've
got.
got.
I guess you
I
spent the
guess
whole
you
summer
spent the whole
vacation
summer
at the beach,
vacation
huh?
at the beach, huh?
You couldn't be more
You
wrong,
couldn't
Kelly.
be more
Actually,
wrong, Kelly.
I had to work
Actually,
like
I
a
had
dog
to
to
work
pay
like
back
a
some of
dog
my
to pay
loans
back
and save
some
for
of
this
my
year's
loan
tuition.
and save more for
Well,
my
then how did you
tuition.
get that
How
tan?
did you
The
get
only
that?
job I could
The
get
only
was
get
loading and
loading
unloading
and
trucks at a
unloading trucks
wholesale
at a
liquor
wholesale
distributor.
liquor
I
distributor.
must have sweated off
I must
15
sweat on
pounds at
15
least.
pounds at
I'm not
least.
kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah. You look
Yeah,
like you're in great shape.
in great
Ready to
shape.
try out for the
Ready
college
to try
basketball
out
team
the
again?
college basketball
I
team
heard that
again?
the trials start next week.
I would, but
Yeah, but
unfortunately, I've just started a
I have just
particularly
started a
heavy course
particularly
load
heavy
this fall.
course.
I have to repeat a course in
I've
physics.
repeated a course in
That's too
physics.
bad.
That's too bad.
I suppose you'll be a bookworm until Christmas.
Until Christmas.
I may be in the same
I
boat.
may be in the same
I've
boat.
applied to be a TA and a lab assistant for the physics department. I'll be spending most of my time this semester inside the lab if I'm
Inside the
lucky.
lab, if I'm lucky.
You'd better hurry up and learn to scuba dive, John.
What do you mean?
According to Professor Smith of my marine biology course, a lot of corals and marine animals will be gone in the near future.
Oh, you're talking about the bleaching, right?
Bleaching, right?
I heard that too.
I heard that too.
Not just that.
Not just that.
Professor
Smith is a coordinator of the Virgin Islands Coral Reef Monitoring Program.
He's the main
He's
guy
the main
keeping
guy
track of
to
corals and other things for ecological research there.
So
He actually dives all over the Caribbean. He just came back from a trip to Puerto Rico in the U.S. Virgin Islands and told us that about 1/3 of the coral in official monitoring sites has recently died. That's a conservative estimate at that. He says it's an unprecedented rate. He hasn't seen anything close to this rate of loss in the Caribbean before. The biggest loss of any reefs the scientists have ever seen.
Wow, sounds bad. But how did that happen? Pollution?
Evidently, a 1-2 punch of bleaching from record warm water temperatures followed by disease has killed all those corals in Caribbean waters. Among them were ancient and delicate corals that were there when Columbus came, you know? He found a colony of 800-year-old star coral. Awesome creature, more than 13 feet high, that had just died in the waters off Puerto Rico. He saw an old chunk of brain coral, the one that looks like a human brain, you know? About 3 feet in diameter. There was at least 90% dead from this disease called white plague. Sounds awful, doesn't it?
Good God. More beautiful things bite the dust because of global warming. You're right. I needed to take up diving yesterday. But can't we expect them to come back some way or another? Can we do anything about it?
Well, we're talking about the extremely slow-growing reef-building corals. Some of the devastated coral can never be replaced because it only grows half an inch a year, if that.
The repercussions from that must be devastating. I mean, if corals go, fish will go. You know, corals are the foundation of the reef, and major fish species use coral as habitat and feeding grounds. No more sushi.
What's more, coral reefs are the basis for a multi-billion-dollar tourism and commercial fishing economy in the Caribbean. Also, I didn't know this, but evidently reefs limit the damage from natural disasters like hurricanes and tsunamis. On top of that, Rieslings are being touted as possible sources for new medicines, too.
Medicines? Really?
Yeah, really. But before we can develop drugs for, say, maybe cancer or some currently untreatable disease, they will be gone for good.
Is it just the Caribbean? Or all over the world? Are we all doomed? I'm getting spooked.
According to Professor Smith, the Caribbean is actually better off than some areas of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. In those areas, mortality rates, mostly from warming waters, the rates there have been in the 90% range in past years. 90%. Can you believe that? He called what's happening worldwide an underwater holocaust.
All right, now I'm totally spooked. Is there anything scientists can do?
Like what?
Like treat the disease or remedy the situation? Anything? Well, what do you think, Gary? The problem isn't what they can do, but what we do. People are still debating whether global warming is real or not. Unreal.
Really? The prognosis is not good, he said. With global warming, scientists are very pessimistic about the future of coral reefs. Then he blurted out, if you want to see a coral reef, go now, because they just won't survive in their current state. He was dead serious.
Sad and frustrating and frightening. Well, did all this happen pretty quickly, or has something been festering for a while?
Until last year, only a few coral species would bleach during hot water spells. and the problem would occur only at certain depths. But in the summer of 2005, bleaching struck in a far greater area of the region at all depths and among most species. For the Caribbean, it all started with very warm sea temperatures, first in Panama last spring, and it got worse from there. Sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean last summer were by far the highest in 21 years of satellite monitoring, and this wreaked more havoc on marine ecology last year than in all the previous 20 years combined.
It's so mind-boggling. Something so extensive and so devastating is happening right in front of us, and right this minute, but so silently that nobody sees it, except divers and scientists, of course.
Professor Smith compared it to a scenario where every city in the United States records high temperatures at the same time, and it remains hot for weeks, even months. That'd be just about the equivalent of what happened in the Caribbean.
But how exactly does heat kill corals? I know they bleach or turn white, but how actually does this happen? Do you know?
Actually, corals don't change color. The algae on them does. The heat causes the symbiotic algae to provide food for the coral to die and turn white. Symbiotic because the coral, in return, gives the algae a place to live, I guess. Anyway, that puts the coral in critical condition. If the coral remains without algae for more than a week, the chance of death soars, he says.
Not all of them are gone yet, though, right? Please?
More than 90% of lettuce coral and star coral and nearly 60% of brain coral have already bleached in St. Croix, one of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And you know what Professor Smith said? He said much of the coral actually started to recover from the bleaching last fall, but then bam! The disease struck the weakened colonies and finished them off.
Sounds like the doomsday scenario for the death of the ocean.
Really? The question is whether the coral can adapt sufficiently quickly to cope with climate change. He thinks the evidence we have at the moment tells us no, they can't. So the fish will go. The smaller predators will go. The invertebrates will go. The same ecosystem won't be sustained.
My goodness. I feel like curling up in the corner of my room and crying.
なんちゅうひどい文章だ。これ結構大げさやと思うね。これ嘘っちゃうかなって思う。トーフルのための学習だから、嘘ついておいてもええわって思ってるかもしれんけど、これはちょっと嘘くさいわ、ほんま。はい。まあ、ええでしょう。